Welcome to the show, James. Excited to have you on and talk some football. It was great to connect, and I just really want to start with talking a bit about your coaching journey. And everyone's journey is different in different stages. I'd love to hear about where you're at with your coaching and what it's sort of been for you in the last few seasons.
Yeah, thanks, Jock, for having me, mate. Look, I think certainly my coaching journey really has only just begun. So, in comparison to probably most coaches, or experienced people that you get on your show, mate, I guess for me, it's what am I? Probably third year in to my coaching journey. I've started. I coached just at development level in our WAFL system, so our 13s and 14s programs. That was done really early on. And then I've sort of started to venture into the senior path now. So I guess amateur footy has been kind of where I started the coaching journey. Had a year there, then took a little bit of a break, and then sort of ventured back to my footy club in East Fremantle. So obviously in the WAFL system, was heavily aligned with the WAFL W there for a little bit in the development league, and now I've moved over. And was a line coach with the Colt system, and now I'm the head coach of the Futures program, which is our 16s program, which basically is an entire season now. So that's kind of where I am in a nutshell. But playing wise, I guess I ventured out and retired back in 2016 from East Fremantle. So I've got a long history there with the footy club. So it's been nice to go back to my roots and be able to give back, I suppose.
Yeah, amazing. And just with your playing career at East Fremantle, how many seasons did you do with those guys?
So I was there for probably, I think I was there for 4 years. I'd come from East Perth originally. That was where I guess I started my WAFL career. The Eagles merger, the West Coast Eagles merger happened with East Perth at the time, and I just probably wasn't getting the opportunity that I kind of needed. So made the move over to East Fremantle, and yeah, look, hadn't looked back. I really love the club. I've invested a lot of time in it, and spend a lot of time in it. Got a lot of good mates there, so it's nice to, like I said, give back and be back in a coaching role, which has given me a very different perspective on everything. So
yeah, no doubt. Talking about your futures role you got coming up as the head coach, what are some of the key pillars or your foundations you're looking to get right with that age group? Is that under 16 you're talking with futures?
yes,
Yep.
oh, look, Jock, I think development is the priority. I guess when we look at certainly our development programs, 14s, 15s, futures, Colts, they certainly, you're not measured on your wins and losses. So we're very KPI driven in the sense of trying to get through our playing numbers and our stocks and making sure that everyone's getting an opportunity, because you uncap a lot of talent. And obviously, from one year to the next, players naturally change. They get bigger, they get stronger. Some go away and spend 12 months of the year purely playing footy. So for me, development is huge. Look, I think just being able to be more versatile with our playing group and being able to develop them in different roles. So they may be an inside mid at community level footy, but they might they come into the WAFL system, that they have to be versatile. So they have to be able to have the ability to play different positions. So that's the challenge, I think, and that's what's most exciting about that is just the individual development that we get out of coaching at this level.
Yeah, no doubt. It's like that, isn't it? You come to these programs, and I'm obviously down here at the Falcons, a similar program here in Victoria. And the reality is, and the managers of the Falcons down here come out and say, we can't have 22 midfielders in our team. You got to have a whole range of players who can play different positions. You have your key forwards, key backs, your rucks, outside, inside mids. And there's no doubt as a player, if you just pigeonhole yourself into one role your whole life, you've sort of limiting opportunities, aren't you? To continue on with your footy dreams, I guess, isn't it? There's 22 spots on a list. 3 or 4 midfielders. That's all there is, really, isn't there?
And then that's exactly right, mate. I think naturally, I guess the players that are lucky enough to step into our program, they're coming from community level footy where it's dads, it's volunteers, and the ones that can kick a footy and the ones that can do most things, they tend to pigeonhole them in the midfield. So that's the challenge for us, is to try and coach them out of bad habits and give them more versatility, give them more tools in their belt. And I guess that's where we come in. I think we're such an imperative and an important part of these young men and women's future. We are the catalyst for change, I suppose, as soon as they step into these sort of programs.
With players, just with listeners out there, with regards to not too worried about winning games, what's that look like for you in terms of game day? Is that, you might have your again, talking about midfield, you might have your best midfield, you think, but you want to see a couple of those guys in different positions. Is that pretty much what you're talking about when you're not too worried about games? It's more about, I want to put him to half forward and see how he goes. It might hurt the team overall because he's not having his skills on the inside, but we want to see him develop in that particular role. Is that what it sort of means to you?
Absolutely, mate. I think that's the key is, I guess we tailor certain, your key tools, for example, they're kind of probably pigeonholed to a certain degree. They can play ruck, centre back, centre forward, but nevertheless, with the modern day footballer, you can be 6'5" and be an inside mid, or you can play as a key. So it is just a case of being okay with sacrificing my my wins and losses, and making sure that it's development as the priority.
It's interesting, mate. No, I love this topic. Something's been going around my head just recent times. I listened to an interview. I can't think of his name. Just a former ruckman down here at Geelong AFL. Was from Hawthorn. I'm trying to think of his name. I should know that, but just retired. And he was saying with rucks, in terms of drafting ruckman, he wouldn't be drafting ruckman less than 205 in height. That's pretty much where he'd be seeing the future ruck. You look at Gawn and Cox and, these guys are 210, 2'8", massive. And I think it filters down then. I think we all need to start to adjust maybe what we look at keys to be. So keys, I think you got to be minimum 195, minimum, probably more like 2 meters really to be a key, to be at that elite level. And then midfielders, so it shifts up in my mind for midfielders then. So if you're 193, there's no reason why you shouldn't be a starting mid, which you're seeing, of course, with the guys who probably changed the game, were Cripps and Bont, weren't they, probably 10 years ago? But the generation's just getting bigger, aren't they?
I know you're a Bomber supporter as well. Yeah. And I'll probably just, sorry to interrupt you, mate. I'm a Bomber supporter as well. So, Joe Watson, for example, coming in, I think 5 or 6 years ago, prior to him retiring, he's, 70s and 80s, he's a ruckman.
Yeah.
So he's coming in at, I'm not sure what he comes in at height-wise, but, I think I heard a commentator saying, that it was the modern day ruckman back then. So that just goes to show how the landscape has changed.
Oh, no doubt, mate. No, well, it's even, talking about Bombers, Matthew Lloyd's 192, 193. So that's, pretty stock standard midfielder height these days. It is interesting. I think going back to our futures, and I'm coaching similar age group here. When you're looking at a player come through and you see them at 188 and they're 15 years old and they're playing centre half back, there's nothing wrong with them rolling in through the midfield, even though you might not have other keys in your team to fill that particular role. But for his development, isn't it? As a coach and as a development, you got to be thinking of those things. Hey, this kid could be a state level player or an AFL player as a on baller or a wing or half forward, rather than being an okay key position player just because he's 190 centimeters fully grown.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. Couldn't agree more.
Just talking at that level as well, in regards to kicking technique, what's your thoughts on kicking technique regarding, I guess, the continual development of it throughout your later teenage years and into adulthood? Where does that sit with you and your thoughts on how much work as a coach you do and how much you recommend a player continue to strive to improve?
Mate, certainly through our programs, I think we put a big emphasis on, enhancing certainly the kick for a start, because I think when you speak to most, the generation before us, is yes, he can run, yes, he can run a 2K in a certain time, but he can't kick. I guess so. That's probably where we sit in that space where we really try and enhance the touch and the feel and and what that looks like, and really breaking those dynamics down. And I guess we're doing a lot of skill craft and a lot of independent work with our juniors to really work on that craft, because let's face it, you have to be a good kick and you have to be really strong in that. So we put a lot of time and effort into really just going back to the fundamentals and really working one-on-one with some of the more so. We find it probably happens more in our tools. That I guess that's where they probably fall away a little bit, is their general skill, and the kicking being one of them. So we try and work really closely with those as well. But, you know, collectively, it's paramount. And we have to, like I said, break it down. And we're watching YouTube videos, and we're filming them, and we're watching the transition over 6 to 10 weeks. It just doesn't happen like that, because they forge bad habits for some of them. And you, much like myself, mate, have probably witnessed some very unusual ball drops, and they might be good players, but if their ball drop doesn't look great and they don't change, you know, they are going to limit their opportunities.
Yeah, no doubt, mate. No, and I do a bunch of junior camps down here, and that's what I tell the kids at 10, 11, 12 years old. If you aren't if you can't kick, like it just holds your whole career back, doesn't, to progress into senior football. You'd be stuck in the reserves the rest of your life. You know, it's just the difference between a senior footballer and a reserves footballer, isn't it? The ability to be able to kick. And if you can't trust your teammate to hit a reasonable target, it just totally holds you back. So no, I'm definitely a believer in constantly improving. I think that old saying, a golfer continually works on their golf swing throughout their careers. I can't see why footballers can't keep working on their kicking technique. More of an overall,
yeah, absolutely.
Sorry, more of an overall question, which I'd like to ask guests. Do you have sort of key principles that guide you for better and more consistent football?
Look, I think definitely preparation. I think preparation is key in most things, and I reckon probably 90% of the coaches that you've interviewed have said probably the same thing. That real understanding with our playing group about drills that we might be trying to execute, and what that looks like for them, and getting the feedback from them, and getting them to explain to us why we are incorporating that drill into the program. I guess I put a bit of an expectation on our playing group when the season starts, is that they are actually reading back to me what exactly is on that training program. And because I put a lot of the key snippets of what we're trying to achieve in each drill, and getting them to reinforce that. So I think I put a lot of time into planning. We start in a month's time, pre-season. So now we're already sitting down and tailoring our program, between weeks 1 to 4, 4 to 8, 8 to 12, and then obviously coming into the season. So we put a lot of emphasis on our preparation. We want to be organised, but we want to have a real flow and a real understanding that, this week we'll work on the contested ball, this week we'll work on ball movement, this week we'll work on structure. So we give them good blocks, so to really hone in on what it is that they need to do. But yeah, mate, I'm a bit of an OCD freak when it comes to this sort of stuff. I love being organised, and I love being structured, like most coaches probably would. But if you don't plan, it's fail to plan, plan to fail kind of principle.
Yeah, no doubt, mate. And just with regards to the flip side of that, is there any common coaching mistakes that you've seen across your journey that you might recommend listeners or coaches avoid?
Yeah, look, I actually really like this question, mate, because I think as most coaches, some of us love the power. And I think sometimes naturally it gets to people's heads a little bit, and they love to talk. And I think so for me, I'm really collaborative in terms of how I see my coaching. I really involve the line coaches and our development coaches. They'll take training. There'll be probably half a dozen sessions that I won't even talk through the session. I'll guide them on, what it is that we want to see, and I'll let them take it. I think a fresh voice. I think the opportunity for the development coaches and the line coaches to really hone in on their craft as coaches, I think is really important. And I think for the players, like I said, they like hearing different voices. So every coach brings their own vibe. naturally. So I'm pretty energetic and up and about, but I've got line coaches that are really calm and just settled, and they just, hit different parts of the brain for some of our players. So, and then just, again, probably what we touched on before, is just losing sight of development, going back to the wins and losses, rather than, on building capacity for these young footballers that are coming through, and making sure that we're enhancing their skill set, and walking away from it going, they're a better footballer coming into our program at the start of the year, but by the end of the year, they're even better, and then they can transition onwards from there. So that's our barometer. That's what we go off. But I think naturally, as coaches, we're competitive beasts. We want to win, and that can be really hard to sit back and just go, this is all for development. So yeah.
Yeah, no doubt. No, I do. I'm a big believer as well in that. Being able to put your ego aside for the group and the better of the group. There's great books out there. Ego is the Enemy is one, particularly by Ryan Holiday's worth a read. Sort of talks about that sort of space. But yeah, I think that's, it's really, really true what you're saying. In the AFL space, and maybe even the WAFL over in WA, is there a coach that you really admire and really see as successful, and why is that?
Oh, look, I think I'll probably just steal the same answer off most, mate. I think Craig McRae's probably set the tone, I guess, for the modern day coach.
Yep.
Look, I think just his ability to connect and build that connection within his playing group, and not just his playing group, but collective. That's obviously fans, and the logistics around, running an AFL program, I think is difficult in itself. But he just has this way about him that naturally people just want to gravitate and be around. And that's such a beautiful quality. And I think probably just going back onto your last question around some coaching mistakes is that, not being authentic, not being yourself. There's no point trying to copy someone else. And Craig McRae, I believe firmly that he's brought his own taste to Collingwood. And I think you couldn't find two polar opposite coaches in terms of Bucks and McRae. Bucks very serious, but obviously had to tone it down at one point or another because he was getting some backlash, obviously the way he communicated in times. But Craig McRae is this really mellow, humble guy that just breeds love and enjoyment. And hey, look, that's why we all play footy. I'm really fortunate to also coach my son's Auskick team, and I go back there for grassroots, mate, to grassroots footy, because I don't ever want to lose sight of what's most important, and that's getting out there with mates and having a kick of the footy. At the end of the day, that's what it is. So, Craig McRae for me, hands down, mate.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think the grand final is interesting this year with Craig McRae and Chris Fagan, and they're the two who come up in this show the most to be admired by people who join us here. And I think they're very similar coaches, aren't they? And it's kind of setting the tone. I was having a chat to our coach down here, and he was even reviewing himself, so looking at how those guys are going about it. I think seeing how successful they're becoming and are, it's really, I think, putting the microscope on a lot of coaches to sort of review what they're doing. The Bucks type people of the world seems to be where it's really headed, isn't it? And it's really here. It's been here for a few years compared to 20 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah, look, I had my first senior coach was Tony McHale. Then I moved over to Eastern Maryland. It was Steve Malaxos, and you couldn't find two more serious characters.
Yep.
Great coaches, but that old school approach this day and age probably doesn't quite work. I think that's probably where the changes happen, and I think Craig McRae is one example. But I go back to probably again the Bombers alignment with Hurdy. I think he was one that naturally, although didn't do his apprenticeship like most, you could just see that there was a commonality around him and players. They wanted to be around him. So I look at that and I go, that's the type of probably coach that I want to be.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think and just on that, in terms of actionable items, I guess, would you have anything that you may have done in recent times to help develop that in you as a coach, and people listening who might be sitting there thinking, gee, I'm probably on the harder side. I'm pretty direct with my feedback. Maybe a couple of little things that they might be able to incorporate this preseason that helps build their relationships, build that connection, maybe just take the edge off them a little bit or a softer side.
Yeah, look. Firstly, I'm really lucky to be a parent. So a parent in this space is really nice because there's an out, I guess, because you obviously can get really consumed in footy. That's our passion. But I guess that brings a more empathetic side to me, which naturally players will gravitate and they'll open up. And that's how you build connection. That's how you build social capital. But for me, I think it's just an awareness of how you behave and how you portray yourself. I am as competitive as many other coaches you'll find. But over the last couple of years, I've realised that my seriousness and my ability to get too caught up in everything can be my downfall. And I've only been coaching for 4 years now, so I've already started that was my big realisation, and that's some pretty harsh feedback come my way as well, that I was like that. Not just from my wife, by the way, but naturally, you have to adjust. You have to adjust, and you have to always be changing, always learning, and never think that anything's out of reach, I suppose, from trying to change those bad habits that you probably came in with. But I'm also really lucky. I work in the disability sector, so I guess I just get an appreciation of life in general. So I guess it's probably nice to have my family, my work history and experiences in that probably lead me to being a coach that's going to attract players that are going to confide and trust in me.
Yeah, no doubt. And it's interesting. I had Matt Dowling here a couple episodes ago, 110. I just double checked that, and he was talking about Mickey Barlow, who's coached Werribee here in the VFL, and they just lost the grand final, had a really great season, and I think Mickey's gone to North Melbourne now. But one of the things he did in his every game or pre-game was he started with a joke, basically, like started the meeting with a joke, and it's just the way he, everyone loosened up, had a laugh, and it's pretty simple thing. I think that that could be your go. So if you're listening, I just think that's not a bad, like, for me, maybe it's probably, I don't know, I might be able to do it every occasionally, but just with the way how I coach as well. But I think that was pretty cool. Just a simple structure, starts off with something, just someone might have done something during the week and he just picks up on it or whatever it is. But you wouldn't have seen that a long time ago, I don't think at all.
No, absolutely not.
No chance. So just carrying on from there, with a player, has there been a player that you've seen and come across that has exceeded expectations, and how did they do it?
Yeah, I was really lucky to play with and against Timmy Kelly. So South Fremantle boy, and I played against him whilst I was at East Fremantle, and he was just he was a scrounger. He was there was no you didn't look at him and go, wow, this is the next best thing that is coming through our talent league. And just with pure persistence and just over time, his diligence to his strength and conditioning, to his load management, he just ticked boxes. And he was such a consistent contributor at South Fremantle at WAFL level. I think he came runner-up in the Sandover. I think that following year he got picked up by Geelong. And anytime I'd walk into the footy club, I'd always see Timmy there. So in my latter stages, I sort of moved away from East Fremantle, had a year off, and then went back to South Fremantle as a bit of a change, but didn't quite work out. Nevertheless, spending 6 months with him gave me a great insight into just how to prepare. And I think his ability just to stay consistent, but to progress in his footy future, just put him at a really good point in his career where he gets picked up by Geelong. He's a mid-age recruit. He's got the life experience. He's a parent. He just worked on his craft, and I think that's he's always a great story to tell. Marlon Pickett's obviously the other one, and it comes from that, not, I guess, a similar background, but, you know, in many ways it does, but just the ability to stay consistent is really key. So he is just one that just sets apart, because I've probably had more one-on-ones with him than anyone. So
yeah, and I love that example. I think it's the first time he's come on the show, and it's probably one of the best ones. I'd love to know how he was tracking at 16, 17, 18. And you look back now, I think he's won the best and fairest, didn't he? I think with the Eagles. And you wonder, how do these guys don't come through? But it's really goes to show, I guess, you know, some people develop at different rates. And maybe his professionalism as an 18-year-old wasn't where it needed to be, and he just chipped away at it, and got picked up at what, 23 or 4, I think he was, I reckon.
yeah, I think it was something like, yeah.
Yeah, it's incredible. And so you feel like he was just really consistent and just kept chipping away and just kept getting better and better and better, and before you know it, you're in the AFL.
Yeah, he did. I think like he was pretty much only a half forward, and a gangly half forward at that. You know, he sort of really light on body wise. You know, then all of a sudden he changes and becomes this contested beast, which you know, he put on size. Really worked. You know, he came into the inside as an inside mid pretty well full time, and then just yeah, like I said, went to work. And then really, at the end of the day, consistency is what got him there. I think he had multiple best and fairest at South, runner up in the Sandover, and then gets drafted. So I think it just goes to show, you know, consistency in your approach goes a long way. It's something to be really admired. You know, I think if I look back on it, I go, oh, I was a really poor trainer. And it probably affects your performance. You know, naturally game days, you know, you don't get that consistency. Might have good one week, average the next. So it just goes to show that, yeah, it does pay off in the end, just all that hard work.
Yeah, no doubt. Is there any myths and mistakes in training that you see, or waste of time?
Yeah, yeah. Oh, look, I guess again, I'll probably steal probably the rest of the other coaches that say, but the over coaching is really big, and it's probably my one big thing, because obviously naturally when line coaches and development coaches come in, they're fairly raw, and I, you know, and again, I do it. I overcoach. You know, I reckon there wouldn't be too many coaches that don't do it, whether they've been, you know, 15 years in the system. Naturally, we get carried away and we end up just throwing out just words for the sake of throwing them out. So I've come in, you know, focusing on 1 or 2 points that we really want to work on in each drill. That's what we talk to the group about. We might speak to them for a minute and then we get them out. We want them touching the footy, and we want them. That's their fun time. They don't want to be in, and I guarantee that probably 95% of our youth that we coach, they probably absorb maybe 15 to 20% of that, especially through game days. You know, I don't, you know, I do to a certain degree, but on game day, I have very little to do with our players whilst the quarter's on. I limit my interaction with them. I'll get them at the breaks. I'll quickly give them 1 or 2 things that they need to improve on, and then get them back out. So yeah, over coaching is a big one for me, mate. You know, I try and limit with the coaches. Just go to that mantra, 1 or 2 things, and then send them out. And then perfection, trying to chase perfection is really is really a big one for me, because I sit there and, you know, there may be a drill that they don't execute, because I see it in my brain and how that envisages for me and what that should look like. And if it doesn't, then it's, God, why can't they do that? Why can't they achieve that? But it could be in my communication style. It could be the way I'm explaining things. So whilst trying to chase perfection is fantastic, it's not achievable. It's there. You're going to have great sessions. You're going to have poor sessions. That's the beauty of working with humans. So I think we just really need to probably just sometimes understand that there's so many facets to footy. There's life that impacts how you train and performance. So yeah, mate, they're the two big ones for me. So over coaching and perfection.
Love it. Is there a couple of favorite drills you like to run?
Mate, to be honest, it is probably my one real downfall. I must admit, I joined up to your membership, and I thought I'll just have a quick gander at some of these drills if I'm missing any. But look, I go to typically game structures or game sim for me, mate, is probably where they really can hone in the craft and really execute, I guess, what we're trying to achieve collectively. Um, and I like to be able to, teach structure while we're doing game sim. So there's a fair bit of whistleblowing a little bit, but explaining to players, this is why you're in this position for, this is your running pattern. So that's probably just one that comes to mind. But the in tight stuff, the quick decision making, the physical contact, that sort of stuff, you love that as a footballer. So I guess for me, I was typically a small forward, and I got sick and tired of having to tackle all the time. So the ball movement drills was nice, just to kick the footy. But yeah, look, like I said, probably honing in on a couple, the game sim, and then just the tight handball games. When you stretch them out, you're able just to see different skill levels that you've got to work with, and I guess being able to dissect why they make those decisions, and get a better understanding from the footballer themselves.
Perfect, mate. Really appreciate your time. I've just got a couple more questions for you. Do you have any favourite documentaries or books that you might recommend for listeners?
I think, The Last Dance comes to mind.
Yep.
I'm not a basketball nuffy at all, mate. I know you guys are into your NFL and basketball and that sort of stuff, and I couldn't be further from it, mate. I very much withdraw from sport, once I'm sort of done. And to be honest, mate, I don't even really watch much footy outside of who I guess I'm involved with at that particular time. But The Last Dance probably just gave you a really good insight into how to be a champion and what the mindset looks like. Michael Jordan, naturally, I think he's most probably of our generation's favourite basketballer. So for me, watching him and just his work ethic is just something to be admired. And yeah, look, wasn't probably the most liked person. I guess that come out of it naturally. But what's more important is being successful or being liked. I guess that's what it comes down to, I suppose. I try and have the balance of both, but naturally, you're always going to put someone offside. And then, mate, I think just for a bit of lightheartedness, Ted Lasso, mate, he is an absolute cracker. Watching, but I think there's a real hidden message in there, and that's just about connection. And it doesn't matter where you've come from. I think that's the beauty of our sport. Naturally, you don't have to play at the elite level. You can come in and you can just be a really good coach. You can be a really good communicator. I watch that and I just think to myself, like, there are just snippets of those series that I watch, and I go, that's just awesome. How he's just the camaraderie that he built, the respect amongst not just his players, but the staff, the bosses, the stakeholders, that sort of stuff. Just goes to show, respect goes a long way, and it has to be a two-way street. So yeah, I get a really good laugh out of that, especially if we lose.
Yeah, no doubt. It's funny, actually. I've had come up a few times, Ted Lasso, on this question, and I finally got around to watching it this last couple of weeks. So I'm just about to finish the third season of it. So it is good, mate. It is. You're spot on. It's I think you've hit the nail on the head with the connection part, and there definitely is. There's a lot of, as a coach, you can take away. Like, I know it's all sort of fictional story, but it's there's plenty you can take out of it. I think it's definitely, as a coach, worth a watch. So and it's easy to watch. It's just such a easy, relaxed viewing show, really. And it's definitely worth checking out. So, yeah, love it, mate. Final question for you.
Yeah.
If I gave you a banner that you could put up on every coach's door that they're going to see day in, day out, what would you have written on that banner?
I think I mentioned it earlier, mate. I think my mantra and what I revert to now, this is my daily life as well, mate, is to be consistently good, not occasionally great. So I think, that rings true in many life, I suppose. I guess for me, it's having the ability to stay grounded. I think to ensure I have trust in myself just to turn up. I think naturally as a parent, first and foremost, as a husband, and as a friend, as a coach, I think I'm always making sure that when in the next 70 or 80 years, when I do pass on, that James he was always there. He was just consistently always there. And I think that's kind of what I live by. And I guess I always share that message. And I'm a pretty vulnerable sort of coach. I like to be really out there with my stories and how I tell them. And I am a bit of a storyteller in that sense. But I always ring true to being just consistent. If you're that, you're going to make it a long way. Because if you do everything right, if you do everything in your power to stay that way, through your trainings, your games, your performances, your diet, your fitness, mate, there's not too much that can stop you if you're ticking those boxes off. I think that's just an appreciation for life. I think I'm really lucky to be in the position that I am and to hold the power that I do hold outside of footy as well. The impact on people is something I take really seriously, because you've got to just be a bloody good person, really, in the day, and that'll ring true. So yeah, mate, consistently good, not occasionally great. I think is what I live by, and look, hopefully my players absorb that and they understand why I share that message and really take from it. So hopefully that puts us in good stead for season 2024.
Love it, mate. Love it. Well, mate, thank you very much for coming on the show, and I really enjoyed talking football with you, and I'm sure the listeners are the same. All the best for the upcoming season. We get back into it, don't we, in another few weeks? So it's always a short turnaround. Look forward to watching you progress, mate, as with your coaching going forward.
Thanks, Jock. Appreciate the time, mate.